So hi, I'm Kerry. A lot of the stuff that we do, or stuff where we started, definitely when we started Tiny Giant, was all about AI, because it felt like a very exciting piece of territory. But we've now moved into other areas of tech as well, so chatbots and voice tech and AR and a whole load of stuff. But we're going to concentrate a little bit on AI, just because it's very much the here and now. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. It's a bit of a buzzword. It's in so many headlines. And these are kind of headlines that are around at the moment, especially in the sort of tabloid papers about AI taking our jobs and AI turning us into more of a subservient kind of race. We've got things about, oh, that can do this better than us. It can now do a whole load of stuff that we never even thought possible. So we've had, quite recently, we had the first AI scripted advertisement that was done by Lexus. So there's all this, quite a lot of fear around AI and what it can do and whether we're still going to be relevant or not. So that's definitely a big thing, and it is still a little bit scary for me as well when I read these kind of things. But looking at something not tabloidy, I suppose, PwC, a big consultancy firm, and just, I suppose, just seeing what kind of thing they're saying. So this is a really recent report from them in terms of the potential risk of automation, talking about 3% in the 2020s. And then going forward, it's a bit more of a stage thing. So I think a lot of the tabloids, like, it's all happening, it's right now, we've all got to start panicking, but ultimately it's going to be an ongoing process. And interestingly, in this report as well, is the fact that there's going to be new jobs created as a result of AI and automation. So there's going to be new things that we don't even know exist yet. So there'll be new jobs, that some jobs will be lost and other jobs will be gained. And hopefully that will sort of go somewhere in the middle. So do we need to worry? I'd say we'll show you a few bits of evidence and see what you think. It's the kind of thing you need to make your own mind up, but things are moving really quickly. So we're going to start with copywriting, just because by trade, this is where we started, so we're both copywriters. Is anyone a copywriter here, just out of interest? Okay. So advertising, copywriting, and just how that has changed and how text and AI and the creation of content has changed as well. So these are two companies, Phrasee and Passado. They do use AI to write email subject lines. And when I first came across this, probably about 18 months to a year ago, I properly bricked it when I saw it, because I'm a copywriter and now there's an AI that can write subject lines, and apparently they can beat a human 100% of the time. So in terms of results, it will beat you 100% of the time. And you kind of understand that because as a human writing subject lines, you probably look at what had already been done, you'd kind of make some subjective ideas of what, maybe if I do a question, it'll be a bit more engaging. But these kind of tools, they can draw on huge amounts of data really, really quickly, work out what's worked before, do something similar, see how that works, and then change it and optimize continually. So it's pretty incredible stuff. But that is just one thing that's happening right now. This is Alibaba Group over in China, so they're a bit like the Amazon of China. They've created an AI copywriting tool lately, which completely blew my mind. This is the stats, 20,000 copy lines in 1 second. It's just like, oh my God, thank God they're in China and not here, so it might be right for a bit, but that's the situation. And I think a few months ago when we were doing these kind of talks, and we've always concentrated on copywriting a little bit or talk about it because it's kind of our bag, and we've always said, yeah, we've got Phrasee and we've got the likes of Alibaba. So Alibaba is using AI to write product descriptions. So it's all quite short form copy. And we always said in the last, a couple of months ago we did a presentation, we were like, it's okay, you don't have to worry. In terms of content creation and long copy, the stuff that's coming out is rubbish. We tried so many different tools that promised all this, you can just type in a few keywords and it will give you a blog, and they were just so awful. That is until this came out. So this is a really recent tool done by OpenAI, which is a company that is owned or supported by Elon Musk. And when they kind of first talked about it, it was probably about 3 or 4 months ago now, they said that it was too dangerous to release because it would change the whole world. And actually, they haven't released it. They've released a light version. And this was released on GitHub a few months ago, and we played around with it then. And then someone very recently, in the last few weeks, has created a tool called Talk to Transformer, which uses that technology but allows you, the normal person, just to type something in and press complete text, and it will create something that follows on from what you've written. So again, we approached this and thought, oh, I'm sure it's going to probably be a bit rubbish. But it's actually really interesting and the best tool that we've seen in terms of content creation and copy. So this is a a line of poetry from John Masefield, and we put this in, and this comes back. So what's interesting is that it's able to understand context. So it's got the boat, it's got the crew, so it's had a rough understanding of what's happening. This one was really funny, and this one made us laugh because obviously a famous line from Rudyard Kipling, and said, I think it's best just to leave it that way. So we were like, that's brilliant. And then in the last couple of days, we put a few other bits in. So we put in our LinkedIn profiles and played around with those. And then yesterday, I put the Tiny Giant little descriptor in at the top there, which is on our website. And really interestingly, this copy is not bollocks at all. It's actually quite relevant to even our sort of ethos and style and revolution in online marketing and creative minds, and we were like, wow, that's actually pretty impressive. So that came out of them. You literally put in a thing, and within a few seconds that comes out. So all the stuff that we talked about 3 or 4 months ago, we were like, it's all rubbish, all the long form copy, you don't need to worry at all. And now this. So I think it's just to show really that the pace of change is really quick and things are changing all the time. So that's just the world of copy. I think another thing with AI is that people say, yeah, but AI is not creative and we don't have to worry because, it can never think like a human. Interestingly, there's a whole load of stuff. So top piece of work there, piece of artwork created by an algorithm. It was sold at Christie's in New York back end of last year, for just short of $500,000, which is not a lot for Christie's, but still the fact that it was created by an algorithm and it was there and it was sold by a really reputable art house. And Duke Deck, which you may or may not know, is a music company. They create AI music, so don't need any musicians. It's all done through data. You literally choose a style of music that you want, I don't know, like some kind of mood, and then you just literally press a button and it will generate a piece of music for you, which is really good for content creation. So if you ever want to put some music on a video that you do. I think it's just become subscribed, hasn't it? Because it was free, wasn't it? So it was free for ages. Cool. So we were saying, if you do any content, go onto Duke Deck and you can just literally get free music. But they have just put, they've made it a subscription model now, but it's still pretty low price. But interestingly, creative stuff is not untouchable by any means. So do you need to worry? Do we need to worry? Maybe. I mean, things are changing really quickly. I think it depends which way you look at it. And we've always said, if we put heads in the sand and just kind of go, no, it's not going to happen. It's like, yeah, you might be, make some mistakes, and it might be a little bit of a worry if you just stay still. But we like to think that actually, although it is a little bit scary and it still scares us, and we're working in this all the time, we do an event every month on AI and creativity. So we get some really great speakers in talking in this space, and we're constantly having our minds blown in this area. But what we really feel at Tiny Giant is, and as Polly said at the beginning, that for us it's about a combination of humans, our creativity, our ideas, and then combining that with tech and doing something that's never been possible before. So for us it's about human-AI collaboration, and today we're going to show you some of the things that are possible with that combination, that human ideas, all the stuff that we have, all of our experience, and then combine that with tech to do stuff that it's never, like a few months ago, just wouldn't even have been possible. So I'm going to hand over to you, Norts, at this stage.
Thank you. Now, the other night, I'll be back, when we did his handover, I slid across the floor, didn't I? Do you remember that? It was a slidey floor. You were there, Anne. Do you remember that? The sliding across the floor, mate, to get the microphone. I was looking at this floor thinking, I reckon I could pull it off in here. But I was telling my wife the other night that I'd done that, and do you know what she said to me? She said, what about your knees, eh? I said, you've got to do these things for rock and roll, haven't you? You've got to do these things. So let's run through we're going to show a few examples of, how machine algorithm, computational creative, is kind of being used in the real world for ideas. I think we're going to get, so yes, we're going to do that. I want to go forward and backwards. So, yeah, imagine, I suppose, in retail, it'd be really nice, isn't it? A few years back, Coca-Cola did that thing whereby they put names on cans, didn't they? And you could go up to the shelf and you could stand at the shelf a little bit at a time and you could take the name off the can. Oh, there's me there, right? Which is all brilliant. But if you've got a weird name, like, for example, where's Polly gone? I bet did they have a Coca-Cola can with your name on it? No, of course they didn't, right? Because they didn't have the full data set. So you probably felt alienated by them or something like that, didn't you, right? So is there a way you could hyper-personalise, do things that appeal to your aesthetic? Well, actually, yes, there is. You can do it with computer algorithms. So For example, we've shown this, it's all over the place, and I always think everybody in the room is going to go, oh my God, we'll use that for that client because that is the most amazing thing. And nobody ever does. Does that mean it stinks as an idea? No, I think it's because their minds are so blown by the concept of doing this that they just can't bring themselves to do it. But it's like, right? So you want to create a product, 7 million unique labels, so that every single label is, how can that be possible? It's quite funny when you speak to like the creative fraternity, you talk to creative directors. I'm going to do that again like you did, Kerry. Are there any creative directors or head of creative departments in the room, right? Good, I'm going to tailor this at you, right? So, right, I'm going to tailor this to you. So imagine, if you will, right, you've got this output, right? And you've got to sign it off because you're taking responsibility. It's your scribble that says, I am happy with this work, but you've got to sign off 7 million, right? You're not going to be happy with that as a task, are you? Because each one is different, right? That's problematic, isn't it, right? But what you have to do in this kind of new thinking is you have to sign off the algorithm that creates it, not the actual output itself, because you haven't got the eyes to do that. The other amazing thing is, could you have a design team that could create 7 million individual labels? No, of course you couldn't, right? You need thousands of people to do it. But thanks to computational creative and digital printing, you can do just that. So here's a case in point. This was actually Nutella did this in Italy. They did it with Ogilvy in Italy as an agency, so hats off to them. It's just basically a very simple algorithm. You take the sort of shapes, colours and forms, you see that it's a GIF, so it's just going to keep running and running. So I'm all right, actually. So you take the shapes, colours and forms, and it basically takes them and it interprets what it sees and puts a label, so every single label is different, right? Now, if I were creating an algorithm, I would definitely put in some kind of thing that says, when I create the shapes and forms, I don't put offensive things in, like swastikas or penises, right? I can't have some sort of filter that says that. It's only ever going to be this shape, this form, this colour, and combination, right? But the point being that if you have that on a shelf, right, and you like Nutella, and you buy a jar, what are you going to do in terms of dwell time? You're going to stand there a bit longer, because you're going to look at the one that appeals to your aesthetic, aren't you, right? And you're going to take one. So they did this, 7 million jars, and the whole thing sold out in about a month, right? Everybody wanted their own jars. Probably started collecting them. And I keep thinking to myself, why don't people do that? Because it's not, the difficult bit technically, of course, is the printing possibly, but in terms of an idea, very simple, it's very unique, it's hyper-personal. That's a kind of very neat little use of creative in that respect, right? So here's another thing, right? You might have seen this, you might not. Apologies if you have. The Salvador Dali Museum, bizarrely, isn't in Spain or Catalonia, as part of Spain where he comes from. It's actually in St. Petersburg in Florida. I don't know why it is, but it is. Right? They work with an agency called Goodby Silverstein, who are always, obviously, if you've got the Salvador Dali Museum, I think you've got license to do some crazy stuff, right? The king of surrealism. You do some surrealist kind of thinking. A little while back, they did a thing whereby they had a VR device that took you inside the mind of Dali, which is kind of interesting. So you think all those melty clocks and elephants with like extended trunks, that would be an interesting experience, wouldn't it, right? You thought, I'd like to see that, but they've surpassed themselves, I just want to make sure I've got some good volume, by bringing Salvador Dali back to life using computational creative and algorithms, right? Shall we see how this works out, shall we? Yeah. So if you go on to YouTube, so this little, we kept the short version of it. This was a little teaser that came out about 3 months ago. Yes, Salvador, yes, thank you. This came out 3 months ago, but actually it's now live at the museum. And so basically it's a technique in creative AI called deep fake, where you basically take an amount of footage of Dali, you basically run an algorithm with it to bring it to life. You put a thing about the mouth where you basically superimpose some other mouth onto it, and eventually you can take old footage, repurpose it, recolorize it, make it real footage, do things with the voice as well, and you've got Salvador Dali. So you can actually go to the museum now and you can talk with him, you can have experiences with him, he introduces you to artwork, and amazingly, there's a really good thing online, which if afterwards we'll circulate some things, where when you finish, he says, how did you go to the museum? And he takes a selfie with you, right? And that's pretty, so that's an amazing experience anyway. You think of that thing at Bristol Airport that kind of just stood there, didn't it? You walked through, this is just an amazingly, to me, a very profound experience that you can have this interaction with this person who's been dead, what, 20, 30 years, something like that, right? So you can do it with Dali, but technically you could do it with anybody, couldn't you, right? You could do it with anybody. You're saying Norts, but you can't do it with historic figures of whom there's no like film or footage, is there? If it's someone like Henry VIII or someone like that. Well, actually, technology probably in the last 2 or 3 months has shown that you actually can. I'm going to run past that one in a minute, right? I want to go to a masterpiece and show you, right? I'm going to move in different ways. So here's a case in point. Here's a case in point, that's the Mona Lisa, but you actually now can bring it to life, right? Now, traditionally, when that Salvador Dali execution happened, the issue was that you have to have quite a lot of footage, a relative amount of footage to analyse and to put the actual placement of the deepfake onto it, right? But this has been developed by Samsung in their Moscow laboratories, which you think, oh, Russia, something funny going on. But I think it's probably to do with phone technology that you want to put in. And essentially what you can do is that same motion transfer movement from the video footage onto a Mona Lisa. So if I click that moment, you can in effect bring her to life. So you can see, so essentially what they've done there is done motion transfer of 3 YouTubers, and they've taken that film, placed it onto that one image, and that image can now actually move. So again, if you think about that as a technique, you can pretty much bring movement and kind of vitality and energy into any kind of creative idea, because, you know, so you think about art places, you think about culture, you think about museums. This is just an amazing kind of idea. So I want to just briefly, I want to go back now. I'm riffing, aren't I? Okay, I'm going all sorts of places, right? But it's all right. I want to get the order bang on. Here's another thing, which is quite interesting. It's going to play. So this is essentially something that Sunday Times did. It was basically giving the speech that JFK was supposed to give if he hadn't have been assassinated on that day in Dallas. And again, this is another technique. This is using technology from a company from Canada called Lyrebird. And essentially, they've taken lots of samples of JFK's voice, and then you can fuse it together with kind of text as well, and then turn it into the actual sound of JFK. Right, so you got the idea? So that's amazing, isn't it? That's a very powerful and moving and interesting way to use a piece of technology to bring something to life that never could have possibly happened. But again, that technically is perfectly easy to do these days, right? And so therefore, again, to your creative palette, it gives you a lot more opportunities. Another example here, going back to art, look at that, it's a nice Rembrandt there sitting in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, except Rembrandt never actually painted that painting. This is actually, again, a computational creative that's actually been trained on a data set of all of Rembrandt's paintings and then actually created a new Rembrandt, and that's what it was called. It was done by, it was ING Bank in Holland that kind of created the whole project. I can't remember who the agency was. JWT, J. Walter Thompson did the whole thing. There's all sorts of interesting evidence. Why would you do that? Is it just to do it for the kind of like the aesthetic of creating it? Well, actually, it was to do with Ing Bank's interest in technology, in moving it forward. It did all sorts of crazy stuff with the share price on the day it was announced, and the number of hits they had, and the YouTuber. So again, it's an amazing way to tell a story, amazing thing. Now that's just a piece of AI art. They use some techniques to give it depth and the way that a sort of old master would create it. But it does actually now hang, doesn't it, in the actual Rijksmuseum itself. It's amazing. We've seen the Mona Lisa there. It's another technique. This is this sort of style transfer. This is quite, I'll put this on for about 4 minutes and just go out and have a vape if I vaped, because I can just let you watch this. This is the notion if you go from one area to another area, right? And you let it, basically a machine do it. There's no human intervention here, right? It just takes you, wow, that's amazing. And it's the way I think about it, it's like a map, right? So this is point A and this is point B, and you travel along point A, and point B also comes to that point, and at some point they both blend into the next thing. So yeah, this is kind of strangely hypnotic. And again, as a computational algorithmic technique with images, this is quite straightforward. The actual technology is something called generative adversarial networks, but as an execution, it's not that difficult, really. But if you can see in terms of the interest that it pulls in to engage people, this is actually 4.5 hours long, so we're laughing here, right? It does become strangely compelling because you start to sort of think, right, I'm going to work out where the next one's, where's it coming from, right? So in effect, it's a very, if you did a human create that, you'd say, oh, there must have been some really clever animation technique to do it. The point is, no human did it. It's just actually done by machines moving along a pathway. Oh, I didn't see it. Did you see that one coming there, madam? Did you see that? No, I didn't. Every single time. Should we have one more? Yeah, let's have one more. They get sort of weirder and weirder as they go along. Yeah, he's going to go there. Yeah, I see it. It's going to be, I can never remember. But again, this is all being done totally by a machine. So that's basically analysed, machine learned the images, trained on working out. That's a bit of is that Gauguin there? Let's bring it to the modern day. This is modern art. Again, could have been created by a human, but actually it's created by New Zealand artist. He's a lecturer in New Zealand, but he's also an artist called Tom White, and he uses these neural networks to create this kind of thing. He basically takes images of everyday items, I don't know, to here, like a teapot or a cash register or plant, and puts it through a neural network, trains it, and then the neural network determines what it thinks the image should be, and it brings out these things. And so he's now sort of become a guy who travels well with these really interesting art. I quite like that as a piece of art. Do you, Kerry? You know, I'm not sure I'd pay 500,000 for it, but you know, it's an interesting technique. It's just things you can do. But let's move to other reels, right? Let's think about the notion of what about voice, what about language, what about this deep fake technology? This is done by a startup in London called Synthesia. We kind of know the guy who does this. Interesting. And their interest is using multiple languages to articulate a problem, a challenge, a marketing message, right? One of the things, if you did it traditionally, you'd have to get loads of voices, you'd have to have lots of different actors, right? But by using this kind of deep fake technology and also voice technology with machine learning, you can actually do really interesting things, right? I met him about 2 weeks ago, and I was asking about how much time they spent doing this. Well, that's pretty cool, yeah? Now, again, that's not using any kind of technology where Beckham's mouth has been manipulated to be other than Beckham's mouth, because that is his mouth. But what's happened there is this technique of style transfer, where they had all the other voices, the people have filmed, and then it's the same way like you saw the painting morph from one to the other. It's exactly the technique. So Beckham's mouth is moving because it's taking the computational data points of the other people's mouths, but applying it to his images, right? So you can, David Beckham, not only is he a fabulous crosser of a ball, or was a fabulous crosser of a ball, he also is a polyglot who can speak amazing languages. The other thing's really cool about this, because it's about malaria in this campaign, is it has, which I've never seen it before, it has a petition to sign, but it's actually a voice petition. So you actually put your voice on the browser and you say, I'd like to join, and it does it like that. It collects your voice, because that's what this company is all about, actually speaking up. It's a really, really nice, compelling idea. Let's try another little idea. Talk to anyone or anything, right? Quite interesting thought. This is in a world of bots. This is something that National Geographic did, and we're quite interested in this kind of field. You see people talk about chatbots and stuff, and there are a lot of efficiency, so it goes to like utility companies to help you with your bill and stuff like that. But we actually think there's a way you can use bots, and I think the term, we don't like the word chatbot, because I think it has a sort of negative connotation. We kind of like the term sort of conversation bot, wow bots, experience bots. And the idea being that you can use a conversational bot. And if you think about these kind of apps, like Messenger and WhatsApp, if you look at the data, they're sort of third and fourth in the most active social channels that people use in the world, right? Or in the Western world at least. So therefore, they're commonly used. People understand the kind of the frictionless nature of them. So in this particular case, you can go onto Messenger and you can have a conversation with Albert Einstein, which again has taken a load of data from the way that Einstein spoke, the way he wrote about things, and you can have that conversation. They used this it was for a TV show, wasn't it? On National Geographic about geniuses, right? Which is about Picasso and Einstein. So it's just a nice, again, compelling, engaging little event, a story you can do. And of course, the beautiful thing about bots and using them is it's kind of, because it's in a digital space, you can use all the kind of media elements. So it's not just about a conversation. You can use sound, you can use video, you can use GIFs, you can do anything to kind of propagate that story. So we kind of got into that, right? And we've been doing some stuff. And so, for example, I think I know what's coming next, isn't it? Because it's nice to have a chat with Einstein, isn't it? Have a little morning conversation, see what's on his mind. But it doesn't have to be Einstein. It can be anybody, or it can be anything. For example, it could be Walter the donkey at the donkey sanctuary, right? Because, you know, people like to anthropomorphise animals, don't they, and that sort of thing. So here's Walter. He's a donkey down at Sidmouth Donkey Sanctuary. He's one that people can sponsor. So as they do sponsor it, because people love their donkeys, don't they? They want to have a sort of engaging relationship. So Walter could send them a DM pack, couldn't he? He could write it. That's perfectly possible. But even better, you can actually have a chat with him online, and you can talk to Walter about how his day's going. I probably features carrots and grass quite a lot, I'd imagine. But you can build personality. So say they've got, I don't know, but they've got 500 donkeys at Donkey Sanctuary, but they've got 10 you want to sponsor. You can have 10 separate conversations with 10 separate donkeys. So if you love donkeys, it's a fantastic way to sort of continue loyalty and advocacy. But equally, you might use it for all kinds of ways to get other members, to spark interest, to push people towards campaigns. So bots in that respect is quite interesting. And again, you can use machine learning technology, natural language processing behind the scenes to kind of counter anybody's conversations and kind of take people to where they want to go on that journey. Amazing. So to you now, we're going to do two other sections. The next one being about text and writing. You love text and writing. You always love the writing.
I'm just going to put my thing back on.
Okay.
Thanks.
There you go.
So one of the projects that we've done, just to experiment again with with what's possible, was is it possible to capture the essence of a writer? And we chose Sylvia Plath, so a poet that I studied at uni and school and I've always really loved. And we took all of her poetry that she'd ever written and then put it into a neural network, so a form of software, it's kind of like an AI software. And over time, it learns from the inputs, everything you put in, and you train it on all of that stuff, and then it's able to create its own poetry. And really interestingly, so we put all of her work in, and then we thought, I wonder what will come out, like, will it feel quite Plath-like? And actually, it really did feel really Plath-like. And there was lots of her sort of idiosyncrasies, the way that she phrased things, a lot of the themes that are in her writing you could see that came out. Sylvia Plath. This is some of the kind of stuff that was coming out of the network, and what we decided to do was to then apply a human element. So Norts and I had a shot at taking the Plath-like output from the neural network and then formed them into poetry. So this is one of the poems that we created from the output. Interestingly about this, it's also written by a robot. So we teamed up with a company in Bristol called the Handwriting Company. And they are two guys, amazing guys, it's a new startup, and basically they can train a robot on anyone's handwriting. So using machine learning, they took Sylvia Plath's handwriting, which apparently was quite all over the place, so she has lots of different styles at different times. But they put all that in, and then it was able then to create a handwriting that looked like Sylvia Plath. And then the robot wrote the poem like this. We've got a video, it's a shame I haven't put it in actually. But yeah, it used a pen and it wrote, and that's Sylvia Plath's handwriting and a Sylvia Plath-like output. So that's one of the projects that we did. In terms of what is now possible, voice technology is another thing we're looking into. So we're looking into voice apps, so apps that are basically on your smart speakers, so Google, Alexa, and this is a very interesting territory. There's quite a lot of brands some more innovative brands who are just starting to use this. So Domino's, which is no surprise. People like the Financial Times have done some lovely stuff on Google. And I'm trying to think who else has done some really nice stuff. Johnny Walker, yeah.
Have a voice
we've got a little voice skill which gives you sort of an update. So it's a bit like a newsletter, but it's on voice. Also, Johnny Walker have done a really nice thing with voice where you can have a chat with the voice speaker and it'll take you on a whiskey tour and you can speak to the chief taster. But what I thought was really interesting about Domino's in that their main, the key thing they want you to do is order a pizza as easily and as quickly as possible. And voice technology was brilliant for this because it's just completely frictionless. So rather than getting an app out, or getting your phone out, or getting your laptop out, you can literally just order a pizza by talking to your speaker. And all you have to say is, Alexa, ask Domino's to feed me. So you don't even have to move, you can sit on your sofa. Once it's got all your details you can literally say that and a pizza will arrive at your door. I mean, it's pretty incredible what's now possible with voice tech. So that's just one example. Lots of other stuff happening in this world, but which we haven't got time to talk to you about today. And a project we've just finished, and which properly finishes tomorrow at the Cheltenham Science Festival, is creating a festival AI curator. So at the Cheltenham Science Festival, there's a new coordinator there this year, and she wanted to do something really different and stand out and get a bit more attention for the festival. So she got in touch with us and said, what can you do? And we created the first AI curator of the Cheltenham Science Festival. And this is her. So the output is textual. It's similar to the Sylvia Plath stuff I showed you, but we created a personality for her. So every year at the Cheltenham Science Festival, they have a bunch of curators. And this year, there's 2 human ones and 1 AI one, which is this. So we had to create personality and a look, because in the front of the brochure, there's the pictures of the curators and a little bit of a forward from them. So we created all of that for Ada. She did a little forward. So we fed in 10 years worth of festival talks. So Norts and I, one weekend, stripped out all the talks that had ever been delivered at the Cheltenham Science Festival, which took ages, and put that into a neural network. And then over time, that network learnt from that output and was able to generate its own talks and its own forward, which is pretty cool. So what did Ada, the network, deliver? these are some of the weird and wacky things that she came up with, some of the talk titles that she came up with. Big Truth in the Wang is a classic. We really like the Dog Workshop, which they didn't go for. But so we took these up to brilliantly. The Cheltenham Science Festival have been amazing because they're just so excited about what's possible, and it's been like a perfect client for us because she's just like, we said, what do you reckon to this? She's like, yeah, just do it, let's just do it. So these are some of the talks. We took up 12 with us actually, and they loved all of them. So what they decided to do was put it out. Well, we said, why don't you put it out on Twitter to the public and see what they choose. So we went out with these ones, and you can kind of see from these 4 talks what they've talked about, because it was drawing on 10 years worth of data, all the stuff that's ever been talked about. You could see, you know, they have had talks on dinosaurs and space, and they've had talks, bizarrely, on narwhals. But the winner is Introvert Narwhals, and that is now going to be delivered tomorrow at the Cheltenham Science Festival. So some guy is going to come, apparently someone who knows about narwhals. We have no idea if narwhals are introvert or not. We'll find out tomorrow. So it's going to kick off with a talk about introvert narwhals, and then I'm sitting on a panel and we're talking about AI and culture. So that talk and that session at the Cheltenham Science Festival was created by AI. And it's just very interesting. And interestingly for her, because she wanted to do something different and get some standout, it did get into quite a lot of blogs. We've seen it in blogs, we've seen it in the press. And we actually went onto BBC Radio to talk about the creation of the curator. And as you can see here with Norts, we also gave her a voice. So using a range of voice technology and AI tools, we also gave Ada a voice. So we effectively interviewed her on BBC Radio Breakfast, which was, yeah, pretty random. But it was a really nice experience. So that's that. It's happening. Oh, I've gone the other way. It's happening tomorrow. So that's all very exciting. And yeah, that's where I'm at. It's you now, it's death metal.
Yeah, I know. Tell you what, next year they'll ask us to do it again, won't they? And we'll say, oh, we run the neural net, but we won't. And the winner will be extrovert narwhals, won't it? Easy win. Hey, look, I was offered a ticket for the cricket today in Bristol. Right? I was like, and I went, oh no, I'm not going to do that because I want to be with my friends at Holt because they're a very warm and receptive audience, right? We're going to have a great time. I ain't going to the cricket today. Eh? Who's laughing now, eh? Who's laughing now? Now, we're going to just show a couple of very quick things, right? My random brain wanted to show you the sort of really, really out there things, right? Because I know that I've got good authority that Holt is one of the epicentres of the UK death metal scene, right? I have heard that, right? So I thought I'd just get you a little bit excited about something, right? We met this bloke, right? He's an American dude. He's from Boston. He's a music graduate, and he's in a band. This guy, he's called CJ. He's a sort of punky dude,
yeah.
Right? And he's basically come out of university with his band member partner, and they are musicians, but they've basically got into using deep neural networks to create simulated band music. So by that I mean they will basically train a neural network to understand the music of an artist, and then they will just let that machine run wild, run free to create music, right, for that. So when we saw this talk he gave an example of the stuff, and it's all online. Yeah, that's them. They're called Dada bots, right? A bit like Salvador Dali again, right? DADA bots, right? I would, if you're into this sort of thing, I would recommend checking them out, right? They did a thing with the Beatles, right, which was quite interesting, where they basically trained it to understand Beatles music, and then it actually then creates Beatles music. Now, what it can't do, it can create the rough sound, the approximation of what a Beatles sound. And they trained it off a lot of early Beatles albums. So when you actually listen to the output, it's amazing because it sounds like a sort of please, please me, I want to hold your hands Beatles. And it sounds like John Lennon kind of singing, but it doesn't make words, it just makes sound. It's like John Lennon just making melodic sounds. It's like, that is mental. So they've tried all these different genres, but recently they hit the payload when they thought about applying deep neural networks to death metal, right? So what they did, they trained this machine on the music of a death metal band, because I can see from the number of heavy metal t-shirts in the audience this morning that you're all fans of Archspire, right? So they trained it on that, and they had it, and so they thought, what could we do that would be interesting get us some attention, get noticed. So basically they've created, I think it's this next button, they've created a 24/7 live YouTube channel, which is this neural network spitting out death metal, right? So this is a machine constantly creating death metal 24 hours a day and has been doing so for about 2 months. What has that done? That has basically given them global attention in the music scene in the likes of Kerrang, Enemy, all the American Rolling Stone. They've been covered by everybody, right? Now, the good thing about neural network death metal and death metal itself is that they kind of sound the same, really. It's like, you wouldn't really know. There are certain elements of it are slightly different. Vis-a-vis neural network drumming is way better than human drumming because it can do it like 10 times faster. But I think I've set it up. So we're going over now live to YouTube to hear. It's pretty death metal-y, isn't it? Yeah, you've had enough of that. But it's amazing, right? Because that machine doesn't know what it's going to create in it, but it just creates it. It has enough data to say, you know, this is what's... You're all going to be there later, aren't you? You're going to rush back to your desks, to your homes. You're going to I'm on dead metal, right? A different one, right? And we're kind of, at the moment, fingers crossed, we're working on. From seeing this, we had this idea. I'll tell the genesis of the idea, if that's all right. Indulge me. And then it's kind of funny. Then you go, oh, actually, instead of us, we should give it. And we've pitched this to somebody, and it's in negotiation, right? But it's bonkers. I can't say what it is, but it's pretty cool. So about 4 or 5 months ago, who wouldn't want to dance like Bruno Mars? Yeah, I'm assuming we know who Bruno Mars is, right? Or let's say Beyonce. In fact, who wants to dance like anybody who's really good at dancing? Yeah, we all do, don't we? Right? This is like how Kerry dances, you know. That's kind of typically, isn't it? You said that. I'm not being rude there. I'm using your jokes, am I, right? That's just typical, isn't it, right? That's your classic, yeah, right? That's pretty. I quite like this technique to be using that actual dance myself. It kind of fights against what we're trying to prove. Anyway, I'll leave it on a minute. So these researchers at Stanford University, again, came on a motion transfer technique where you could basically taking film of any kind of dance, and you could turn yourself into doing that dance, right? Which is kind of amazing. To sort of simplify the technique, there's computational creative behind the scenes doing the mathematics of it. But essentially, you film yourself for about 20 minutes at a very high speed frame rate, doing that really, right? You don't have to actually dance. You just have to basically demonstrate where your joints are in your body. It then uses this PoseNet thing to create like a skeletal model. You have one of the actual dance as well. Now the dance footage is fine because the dance footage is kind of clean. We've got a lot of data, it goes in. So it says, that's what the dance footage is. Let's style transfer from dancer onto you, right? How does that work? So suddenly, it doesn't matter about the technique, you can become brilliant, right? Let's have a little look. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So when it came out, and again, this gets put on open source, you look at the computational create, how you do it, it seemed quite a complicated procedure, not impossible, but then people you go into that kind of open world, people start experimenting, they find hacks and shortcuts, and you can do it by this technique and that. And actually it became simpler. So we had this idea, we can't even use it next year now, we had this idea where on April Fool's Day, we were going to show someone, this is a classic thing, when you have a technologist who has a really great idea, they don't turn it into a good story, they just show you, look, we can dance like a ballerina. That would be much better, wouldn't it, if she wasn't there and you actually thought that how have they learnt to do that? That's the storytelling, right? That's the sort of advertising, marketing element of it. So we were going to do this thing whereby we were going to tell the story of the world's greatest dance teacher, and these people would come in, they'd film, and they'd be terrible, and then 10 seconds later, by cutting the film, they're all dancing like geniuses, like Beyonce, right? How does she do it, right? That was going to be it. And then we thought to ourselves, well, actually, why do we do it for it? You could take this to media and use it. So we did. So one of the problems was, how could we do it in such a way that you don't use so much? You want to make the actual creation of the output much easier by the input. So we got one of our friends, Roloff, who's a developer. So like I said, this was probably, so the paper says, this is probably about 20, 25 minutes of filming on their part of them doing that at a high speed frame rate, right? But the computational way you can do it now, and this is only about 3 months later. So this is our friend Roloff doing to the same dance, right? That's him in a flat in London, and he basically did it on 5 minutes of filming on his mobile phone. You can see he's got... Right, so you can see that that's 5 minutes filming on his phone at normal speed, and it's a little bit shonky, but actually, I think the shonkiness makes it kind of slightly better in a way. So as a social media idea, that's kind of nice, isn't it? Making anybody can be a brilliant dancer. Watch this space, right? Another one. Kerry talked about neural networks, and we do a lot of stuff with text and neural networks. Philip's around, isn't he, somewhere, right? Remember bath cats and dogs, right? This is your moment, right? This is your moment to shine. It's like one of those things I saw this week, and I thought, why didn't I think of that, right? So there's a lady in America who's a science researcher called Janelle Shane. And again, I'll find her details if you're interested in this sort of thing. Check her out. And in a way, she kind of does a lot of these experiments that we do, whereby she will take an amount of data, text data, put it into a recurrent neural network, and see what comes out, right? And it's just exploring areas. So you've seen the stuff we've done. We've done stuff with cupcakes, and we've done stuff with cocktails, and that's been all very interesting. And what tends to happen, we haven't talked about it today, we end up making them, but you could do it with pizzas, you could do it with ice cream, you could do it with anything, you could do it with trainers, it's the same sort of thing. But you start with a piece of text, and it comes to an output. You could do it with film scripts, scratching the surface. But I think Janelle has hit the high watermark here with naming kittens, right? This is amazing. So basically, what she did, took a data set of all the names that people give cats, right? And you can probably get a data set, well, thousands of names, right? Typical cat names, right? You put it into a recurrent neural network, and again, I won't go into the details, the boring details how you do it, but you can basically train that machine by the word. So what it's trying to do is predict, it learns what it needs to learn, and then it tries to predict what the next word or letter will be. In the name of naming a cat, you're going to do it by character, because cats normally only have one or maybe two names, two parts of their name, maybe. So you actually do it by, so what's actually happening is it's seen all this data set, it then sees a letter, and it will then try to predict what the next letter is, and the next letter, and the next letter, and the next letter. And that's how you create the names, right? I don't really understand the science of why it decides to stop at that point. Maybe it thinks 6 or 7 letters is the right number for a name. But anyway, she's done this with kittens, right? Why would she do that? Imagine you're a rescue home and you want some PR, you want to get some attention, you want people to actually see that you've got kittens that need rehousing. What better way than to fuse lovely kitten, adorable kittens with AI technology, right? Is that a success? So she did this with them, and it's amazing how, by putting this out into the news, in the way that news, as you did at the start, said Kerry at the start, didn't you? The newspapers love a good computer story, right? This is a happy story, right? No killer robots in this one, just adorable kittens. So look at some of the names that the machine came up with for the cats, right? Mr. Sinister, right? So what they did with all the kittens they rescued, they started giving them these AI names, right? So Star Maker he does look a psycho, doesn't he, right? Pompeur, Tom, there's hundreds of them, and they basically renamed all their rescue kittens with these AI names. Publicity, PR, and most importantly, Kerry, more kittens adorable kittens, more of them get rescued. Isn't that wonderful, right? But it doesn't have to be kittens, does it? It could be dogs, it could be donkeys, it could be anything, really. It could be human beings. But that's an ethical question for another day, perhaps, I think. Kerry, I'm going to hand over to you.
Oh, yeah, it's the end.
It is the end. It's just the end of our front one.
So I think what we wanted to say from today is you could just ignore what's coming, turn around and go, oh God, this is not for me at all. But what we think everyone should do, or at least consider, is to embrace the machine, AI, human collaboration. There are so many things you can do. The possibilities are just mind-blowing, and yeah, and obviously if you want to work with us, give us a shout. But thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hey, they've been good to us, haven't they, the people?
We'll always
have time.
Literally 2 more minutes.
Right. Get your gifts, some gifts for you. Everyone wants a gift, don't they, right? These are some particularly special gifts that we've brought to Holt, right? Stuff we've done. So number one, we have a WhatsApp group, which is probably about 80 strong now, and you can go on it, and it's a really interesting community because people put lots of these things they discover. We just encourage the group. If you see something with technology, or it can be anything really, have a debate, have a discussion. People come, they go, they get annoyed. It's all part of the fun, but also we try to put everything that kind of breaks. So if we see an interesting piece of media, a story, we put it on there. So it's almost like your news feed of all this kind of technology because you want to share it, right? So I'll just so you can do that, or if you haven't got the ability on your phone to use a QR code, they all use them in China, don't they, right? I'll send you the link and you can do it that way, right? More the merrier. Although there is a limit, isn't it, on WhatsApp, I believe? 250. About 250, right? Yeah. So that's that. Come and join our group and see what goes on. There are some interesting characters on there, but that's a story for another day. Now, this is just fun, right? We started doing augmented reality stuff because we were requested to do some. And it's something we worked on probably 5 or 6 years, and it's carried on. You saw the Pokemon thing about 2 or 3 years ago, the Pokemon Go, which kind of spiked augmented reality again. And again, it's a bit like the teller thing I talked about earlier. I'm going to look right down the camera. I really don't know why more of this stuff is going on, James, you know? Because augmented reality gives you so many incredible opportunities to do all kinds of fun things, interesting things, useful things, right? But here's two things. I don't know that these are this useful. It's just fun, right? And you can have them, right? Let's put the first, right? You can leave this room with your own tiny giant baseball cap, right? Through the power of augmented reality. So I sent this to my sister, right? A picture, and she said, she got a bit sniffy with me. She said, why have you not sent me a baseball cap? And I'm like, well, it's not actually a real baseball cap, is it? It's an augmented reality cap. It's a 3D model that we've created and placed on our respective heads. But why haven't you sent me a baseball cap, right? It's like, what? No, let me explain again. That is the very code. You can put that code right now on your phone in Snapchat, and that's how easy these things are to work, right? This one is not so. This is that's me as a sausage, right, or hot dog, or whatever you'd call it, right? We were messing around yesterday, and I said to Derek, our third member of Time Shot, I said, I wonder if Pepperami have ever done that on, Snapchat, right? No, they haven't. It's like, you could go now, pick up the phone, go and tell them. I think it's an amazing missed opportunity, because they even see the right sort of brand, don't they? Because to do that sort of thing. So there again, you see, if you want to impress your friends, right, you can just, it's just a playful way to use your Friday, isn't it? Yeah. That really is the end. So we'll say the end. Always end on a low. Thank you very much for your time today.